Welcome to the Fashion Translator. I'm Claire, your host. Together we explore how AI and innovation are reshaping the fashion industry through creativity, technology, and global partnership. For today's episode, I'm delighted to welcome Jemima Donbury, founder of Sartor. Jemima, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Please introduce yourself and Sartor.
Absolutely. So, I'm Jemima. I'm the founder of Sartor, and Sartor is kind of like the Canva for fashion design and manufacturing. So, we're trying to make it really, really easy for anybody to be able to design clothing without technical expertise or without industry connections, and then be able to connect up to our vetted manufacturing network, which is currently across 4 different continents, to then go through to manufacturing. And I guess the reason that I'm interested in this area or got into it is that I kind of grew up working in fashion. My mother has a fashion brand, and so from literally age 10, I think I was working with her every summer and really seeing what it takes to launch and operate an independent fashion brand and all of the challenges that come with that. And then went on to get further experience in the fashion industry throughout university, doing internships at like Tommy Hilfiger, Selfridges, Net-a-Porter, and Anya Hindmarch. And then ended up going in such a different direction. I joined an AI-focused venture capital fund and spent some time working across the portfolio of AI startups and then in strategy consulting, but always had this interest for the fashion industry. And so knew that I wanted to bring those experiences together to create something that was innovating in the fashion industry. And particularly, I think what I'm most passionate about is like, how do we help small fashion brands and people who are, aspiring fashion designers to be able to do that more easily without requiring a whole team and without, all of their creativity and their time and effort going into the operational side of the business, because that is exactly what I've seen with my mother running her business. And I know how challenging it is to be a small business owner, particularly in fashion. It's a very difficult industry. So anything that we can do to make it easier for designers and creatives to be able to, realize their vision and run their business more sustainably is incredibly important. And that's the impact that I would love to have on the industry.
No, I feel that is so true. As designers, so many start because there's this pain point they want to solve, or they saw this white gap in the market, or there's this idea they're very passionate about. And then when they start the journey, they get sucked into everything else outside design. That ends up being a big chunk of what it is to run a fashion business.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in the past year, we've seen so many independent labels shutting down, even some of the ones that you think of as like successful, like, Mara Hoffman, a very established business, great brand name, lots of people would recognize it. And still, it's just financially very, very challenging to run a strong kind of creative fashion business if you don't have the backing of a conglomerate, because they can get, better negotiating power with their manufacturers and they can source in bigger bulk. And so I think being able to give access to emerging brands and smaller labels who are producing lower quantities to a similarly kind of professional manufacturing network and lower order quantities is kind of critical to allowing people to actually build sustainable businesses out of this. And therefore that brings more creativity to the industry. If you have more people who are able to, express their creative vision and design their clothes that express their kind of story and their viewpoint on the world, and allows them to have that kind of artistic direction, then I think that only kind of enriches the industry versus having all of that creative power kind of concentrated into the hands of the large conglomerates and the designers at large fashion houses. So I think that's why I'm really passionate about trying to, I guess, arm the people on the ground with better tools, so that, like, I've seen it with my mother. She started off designing because she loved to draw and she loved sewing, and she was very amazing at all of the technical processes when it comes to creating fashion. But now she spends most of the time on meetings talking about marketing or talking about sourcing or logistics or taxes, which is leading to a point where, she's kind of hating her job because it's
a lot of things that you got to learn where you don't like they were not necessarily have the expertise, you know.
Yeah.
If we take like let's say the example of like you have an influencer that would like to work with you, could you walk us through like the different stage that it would go through for you to kind of help them grow and what it would entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess you're kind of touching on the second model of the business that we work with. So there are two parts to Sartor. One is that we have this tech platform that anybody can go onto. They can design their own garments by selecting from lots of 3D renders of silhouettes, and they can then customize them themselves with imagery, print, embroidery, or any kind of specific requests, and then get them manufactured through our network. The other model, and what we actually started out doing, was partnering with influencers to help them launch and operate their own fashion brands. So we've now launched, I think, 7 different influencer-led brands in the past 7 months.
Nice.
And what we do with these influencers is we're quite selective with who we work with in the first place. We want to ensure that they have a large enough audience, that their audience is engaged, and that they have like a distinctive it's something distinctive about them that can be turned into a unique fashion brand that we think will resonate with their audience. And so what we do is we start off by supporting them on the branding and the design side. Obviously, they're in the creative director seat, so they are able to really help us understand what it is that their audience and their community likes about their style and translate that through into their collection. And I guess where actually creators are in a fantastic position to build brands versus other people is that they already have that. And that isn't only important when it comes to actually launching the brand and getting sales, but it also allows them to get feedback from their customers and have them as part of that product development journey. So the people that we've seen do successfully have shared every stage of the process and got feedback from people on the designs. So their community is saying to them like, oh, I love this top, but would you do it in red instead of pink? And so they're able to actually bring that feedback into the design process. And then we help them with manufacturing. So we now have a vetted manufacturing network across Turkey, Portugal, China, Colombia, Mexico, and it's always expanding. We have a few manufacturers we're now exploring working with in the UK, the US, India, and they all specialize in kind of small order quantities, which is really important because obviously when you're starting out, you don't want to be ordering thousands of units,
Yes.
but it's quite rare to find. So that's what we've really focused on when it comes to onboarding these factories. And then we go all the way through to support the influencers with e-commerce and with warehousing and operations. So we have now warehouses in the US and Europe that we partner with and develop the e-commerce site specifically for the influencers to allow them to launch and run their business.
That's amazing. I'm sure this is growing, and I think it's something that was needed in the industry. There is so many there's so much potential to be tapping into when it comes to influencers that have a direct connection with their audience and that could get this feedback plugged right into. Sometimes, like if we think about just the fashion brands as a whole, it can take time before we get feedback on what's selling, what's not. So this is like a much faster opportunity to turn around.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's really exciting is actually how you can use technology as part of that process. So in some cases, we've even just used like 3D visualizations or AI generate or AI assisted generated designs as part of that sales process. So what the influencers would do is like share those early designs and get feedback from the imagery that they then use to either get their followers to vote on which items they like most or to provide feedback that allows them to select which items they actually put into production and go through to sampling and manufacturing. So yeah, there are so many ways of now, I guess, launching brands in a more lean way. And one of the other things we often do is actually just launch with pre-orders. So they will launch having just created the sample and taken pictures of the sample, and then they're able to use data that they get from their customers on what sizes they should be buying or which colorway is the most popular, and that allows them to then buy their their units in accordance to what is selling the best, and therefore cut down on waste and minimize overordering.
Yeah, and that must help them also with the minimum order quantity to get started. That's also helps for that. You mentioned AI for like to for generate um, kind of a preview. Is there other ways that you're leveraging it, either to analyze the data that's coming from this feedback? How else in the business do you leverage the AI and the technology?
Yeah. So I think at the moment I would say this is more, we're using AI more within the actual product that we've developed rather than on the influencer side of the business.
Okay.
Um, but with the tech product, we're still in the early stages of developing it, but definitely on the roadmap, we would like to bring in more, generative AI in the design process itself. So at the moment, you can import images that you might have found online or designed yourself, or maybe generated using ChatGPT or Midjourney. But we would actually like to have those generative capabilities within the design experience itself, native kind of within our site. So that's one area where AI will definitely become part of our product. And then the next stage is actually on the sourcing. So
Mm.
for sourcing from these different manufacturers, uh, from the designs that you've created, we can identify which manufacturer will be most relevant for you. And according to your target price point, we'll be able to direct you towards the more relevant manufacturers to get quotes from and then to go forward to manufacturing. And that's an area where we would actually see that being organized fully by like agentic AI. So AI agents that would
Mhm.
go and send out quotes for you, receive quotes back, and potentially even
Right.
negotiate on your behalf, and then advise you on which manufacturer would make the most sense for you given where you're located and what the implications are of that for tariffs or import duties or transport costs, so that you can actually understand which location you should be manufacturing in. And I think then the next stage of that even is, at the moment, the designs that people are able to create through this platform are very customized. It's not like print on demand where you just take a t-shirt and put a print on it. You can
Uh-huh.
really choose between hundreds of silhouettes and lots of different fabrics and customize it fully, which means that it's very, very difficult for us to provide pricing information to you live on the site, because that will
Okay.
vary a lot depending on where you're manufacturing and some of the more detailed design decisions that you'll have to make.
How does
But
the prices get provided as of now? Like,
yeah, at the moment, we have to request the prices from the manufacturers who then
uh-huh.
provide us with kits. So there is a bit of a lag between design
I see.
and understanding the pricing, which is, that's very normal in the fashion industry, but to a lot of consumers, we think that it will seem confusing and they would rather just understand the pricing as soon as possible. So in the future, what we should be able to do from having that data on different prices that have been provided by the different manufacturers is actually be able to provide a better estimate of the prices upfront during the design process, showing you
Mhm.
how, if you add print here, that will lead to a $1 cost addition, or if you add this embroidery, that will probably increase your prices by this much, so that people can actually have that live feedback whilst they're designing on what type of price point they're aiming for according to the sorts of design decisions that they're making. Because ultimately, that is what impacts the price of garments. I think people often
Yeah.
think that they can negotiate lots with their manufacturers, but it actually is all just calculated based on the inputs, the time it will take to sew the seams, the different design details that you're incorporating into that. And so if we can calculate that as part of the design process, that gives more transparency and like immediate feedback whilst you're designing.
I can really see the value in that because if you think even established brands that have an entire production department to follow up into that, like this quotation process, I would say very often it's not optimized. It's done by email back and forth. There's interpretation, like error of interpretation or language barrier, or this one quoted including the testing, this one quoted not including, this one include the packaging, this one is not including the label. And when you're juggling all these quotations that you're receiving, it's hard to put them all on the same baseline to really see which one is the better fit, let's say. And I, like, from my experience, I found that very often, like, the communication, how it will go with impacted as much as like on the price, or if they have the best product. Like, it will often be, okay, at least this one is responsive and at least this one knows what he's talking about. So I'll just go with that to make sure, where actually it might not be the best fit for what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think when you're working with manufacturers, it is very important to pay attention to those areas like, are they being responsive? Are they explaining to me
Correct.
processes?
Yes.
Because that does give you an indication of actually, will they be easy to work with and will they deliver on time? But
Precisely.
I particularly when you're talking about those bigger brands, yeah, they waste so much time in back and forth between these manufacturers. And for the manufacturers, they are spending so much time and money on calculating costs and providing quotes, only to then find out that, okay, a different manufacturer offered a slightly lower price, and that I now need to go back with a lower offer in order to win this project. And so if there was a way to automate more of that processes, then that would be fantastic. But I think the challenge is that a lot of the inputs have to come from the manufacturer. You have to connect into their PLM system. It is quite a complex engineering job.
Yes.
And then on top of that, and a data job, because you have to understand the pricing of all of their different trims that they might provide or materials. And so it's just a very complex, networked supply chain. So I can see why at the moment these big fashion brands are doing it in what seems like this old-fashioned, very inefficient way. But at the same time, by having that close connection with your manufacturers, you should be able to get to a point where you have greater transparency and can really collaborate with them to speed up the time that it takes them to provide you with a quote, which is win-win for both parties.
I think there would, from what I see, there would be two things that will take us there. First, there's going to be improvements. AI is changing and evolving and learning so fast that I think what is possible today and what is possible in just 6 months or 1 year it goes so fast that it's even hard to predict to which extent it will exponentially explode. So I think definitely this is something that is worth exploring. And also I feel there will be a learning curve for the fashion industry that can be conservative when it comes to adopting change or jumping on the latest technology. They tend to stick to what has been proven to perform. But I think with time, with both of these coming together, and there's even AI as a broader topic gets more and more traction and more visibility. People are getting more comfortable. So I think ultimately it's a matter of time before this gets to the next level, not only for, I think what would be maybe a key point is that with influencer or small brand or people that want to start, because it's not this big machine, they are able to pivot and shift. So they might be able to get this started before the bigger brand can jump on this kind of system. Basically, agentic matchmaking and quotation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think within very large businesses, it's always really difficult to get people to start adopting new tools. And particularly when all of the different teams within, a large fashion corporate are so siloed, and often the, design and buying process goes through so many rounds of iteration to the point that by the time you've ended up placing your order for the designs for that season, the initial creative kind of vision is completely lost because it's gone through all these different rounds of feedback and features. So I think given the kind of challenges of getting people to adopt and getting people to then communicate across those teams within a big organization, I think there will be challenges getting adoption, but equally they do have the budget to be able to push that innovation forward and to learn about it more. I think probably where there's the most unwillingness to adopt technology is with manufacturers. They definitely are a bit more slower to adopt technology. And so one of the key things that we know is going to be important when working with manufacturers and integrating more deeply into their systems is ensuring that we are doing it within workflows that already make sense to them. So rather than asking to adopt some new technology in order to be able to work with us, and I think this is actually the breakthrough that agentic AI is bringing is that actually we can just work within their existing communication systems, whether that's, WeChat or WhatsApp or email, or it's through a PMM. We can integrate with all of those different systems and ensure that we're sending them the communication to the most relevant interface for them so that it feels natural. It doesn't feel like they're dealing with some new software or an AI agent. It's just that they're being provided information within the usual workflow. And I think that's key to unlocking adoption and stronger partnerships with these quite kind of reticent
of course,
to adopt parties.
Yeah, I think slowly but surely this would be the direction. So aside from these, the roadmap that we just mentioned when it comes to AI, if we think broader than AI, what's your vision for the years to come? What's something you're excited to build and grow on?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really about enabling more people to be able to design to a more professional level without necessarily having to have that background or the network or the connections. So at the moment, if you are trying to start a fashion brand or you're trying to manufacture clothing, you have to go through so many steps to get there, and it's very fragmented. The first thing is maybe to, come up with your designs and then to find somebody to create a tech pack. So then you have to, go try to find a freelancer or find someone online who can do that for you. And it's quite difficult to know the quality of the person that you're hiring to do that. Then once you've got the tech pack, you then hit the main barrier for most people, which is trying to find a manufacturer that is willing to start working with a new client on low order quantities usually. And if you don't contact them in a professional way with the tech pack already, many times people just don't even get a response.
Correct.
And that seems like, why is this manufacturer being so unprofessional? They're not responding to me and I'm a potential client. But in reality, it's because for the manufacturer, they get
frustrating
all the time. And if you're not expressing to them, no, I'm professional. I know what I'm doing. I know what I want. I'm here to place an order of these units. They know that it's going to take them more time to reply to you and to hold your hand through that process and explain, this is our minimums. And if you can't reach that, no, unfortunately, we can't work together, than it would be for them to win that very small project. And so I think that's where what we're doing is really important, because it's mostly trying to bridge that kind of communication and knowledge gap between people who really don't know how a factory works or how you're meant to approach one, and these factories that are willing to work on low order quantities, but they don't want to have to spend more time than it's worth holding your hand and explaining the processes to you in order to onboard you. So we kind of bridge that gap by ensuring that the information that gets passed to the manufacturer has allowed the user to really communicate their design in a very effective way. And then we've templatized certain parts of the process or certain parts of the kind of tech and the patterns, so that actually there's less development time required for the manufacturer. Like, most manufacturers do not make any money on sampling. They lose money on sampling or just about break even on sampling.
It's an investment for them.
Yeah. And so if you can minimize the time that is spent on the product development, on sample making, which is one of the most expensive parts of the process, by providing them with pre-made patterns, then what you get is, more efficient orders coming in for them, and therefore hopefully increased profitability for them and more clients that are taking less time to onboard. So yeah, one of the areas that I'm most excited about at the moment is that we're actually beginning to work directly with manufacturers to feature their patterns on our site, allowing people to actually select between patterns that these factories already have, and go directly from there through to manufacturing. And typically these patterns are something that manufacturers will regard as kind of their IP. They've developed them, and pattern making is an expensive process. But this is a way for them to be able to actually get new customers whilst minimizing development costs by just, so many people are looking to get quite similar items made, like a shirt or a t-shirt. It's a fairly similar pattern, but at the moment, typically you're starting from scratch every time, rather than building on top of what already exists.
So they can get back value on investment they already did. And
yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Well, Jemima, we covered quite a lot. Thank you so much for joining me.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me. It was really interesting to speak about it all.
Yes, for AI and everything is just fascinating topic. So I'll make sure to keep an eye on what's going on for Sahto. I'm excited for what's coming for you.
Thank you so much.